do want to bring in my next guest. It's Stosh Graham. He's Managing Director and Chief Investment Officer of Graham Capital Wealth Management. Stosh, thank you so much for joining the show this morning. And with fractional losses for the S&P 500 and the Dow, how is the market interpreting the president's latest tariff talk?
Good morning, Kristen, and happy Liberation Day to all those who either celebrate or, I guess, cry. I think you've already seen the movement primarily. You've seen earnings revisions come down week after week for the last 2 to 3 months. So, Kristen, I think there's some degree of pricing in this. I think the interesting part over the next, say, few days will be, do we have a buy the rumor, sell the news dynamic? But right now, again, you have businesses across the country trying to figure out if they already haven't tried to front run tariffs, and we've seen that show up in the manufacturing data, some of these other industries that maybe are indirectly impacted by tariffs, what's going to be their game plan in the coming quarters of how to deflect higher costs, and ultimately how do they continue to maintain market share without really increasing prices too much that ultimately loses that market share for the consumer.
So my question to you is, should the consumer be prepared for inflation ahead, Stosh? We've seen the soft data indicate that they are in fact anticipating an increase in the pace of price gains.
Kristen, this is going to be one of the major, I think, variables that people should watch over the next month or two. How will the hard data and the soft data, how will they meld? As you mentioned, soft data has been consistently bearish and pessimistic the last, say, 1 to 2 months, say, come into December. But the hard data really hasn't reflected that soft data. Now, there have been moments. We just saw consumer spending for the Atlanta Fed came out with their GDP Now forecast. It updated yesterday. It showed that consumer spending, PCE, came down by 0.6%. It's not too often you see contractions in consumer spending over a quarter without it being associated with some type of recession. So we're not in a recession, not yet, but we have to watch what these impacts are because we are a consumption-based society.
So what does this mean for stock performance? I think many strategists, Stosh, on this show anticipated that we would see very strong economic growth this year, that the tariff talk was just a negotiating tactic, that President Donald Trump's visit here at the New York Stock Exchange was a bullish sign for stocks. But of course, we've seen that environment change over the course of the past 6 weeks.
Absolutely, Kristen. Again, and I mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, we have seen earnings revisions and expectations get revised lower for the calendar year of 2025. But we're still, right now, the consensus is still expecting 10 to 11% of earnings per share growth for the S&P 500. We believe that's too high. Right now, again, the impacts of tariff, and this is a common question we get, okay, what are the impacts of tariffs? Will we see it immediately, to your prior question? No, not necessarily. But again, in certain parts of our economy, we've already witnessed it. We saw a front running or a pull forward of manufacturing orders. Now, on the other side of it, we just saw an update where one of the recent regional Fed reports showed the manufacturing new orders really has collapsed over the last 30 days. So we've already seen a bullwhip effect within manufacturing. But I think the larger issue, and again, to a prior question you had in regards to consumption, is if consumers consume less, their real disposable income continues to fall behind inflation. Their real disposable income falls. Their consumption should shrink if they're not borrowing on credit. What does that do to business revenue if they can't sell the same amount of goods that they were expecting? Lower profits, lower profitability means lower share prices, and that means a lower wealth effect. And it all has, unfortunately, a loop and a feed on itself. So we haven't seen it yet. The loop hasn't started, but it is something we should be watching over the next quarter or two.
Stosh Graham, he's Managing Director and Chief Investment Officer of Graham Capital Wealth Management. Stosh, thank you so much.
Absolutely, Kristen.